the goal with your hook is to get somebody to press see more, right? It's that largely LinkedIn spreads posts based on like dwell time, on the amount of time that somebody spends on it, right? So getting folks to at least click that means that you're at least going to get another couple seconds.
Sharp strategies, sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is your host, Tiffany Swedensky, and you're listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. Today, I am talking with Tony Albrecht of Contender. I've known Tony, I don't think we met in person, but I've known him on LinkedIn for a long time. He also works with and talks to attorneys. He's an attorney himself, although I think this is pretty much all you're doing right now. Is that right?
Yeah, for the last almost 3 years. It's been my full-time deal.
And so we're gonna talk to Tony today about social media marketing, referral marketing, wherever the conversation goes. I'm really excited to have him as a guest. And I'll let him finish up and tell us a little bit about himself.
Excellent. Thank you for the invitation, Tiffany. Yeah, I describe myself not as a marketer, but as a lawyer who accidentally got good at LinkedIn, where I'm from St. Louis. I practiced law out of Missouri, Illinois, and for a very brief time early in my career on the island of Guam. So I've taken and passed all 3 of those bar exams. I'm coming to you today from the town of Bracebridge, Ontario, about an hour and a half north of Toronto, where my wife and I have been living with our 2 little kiddos since the spring of 2021, when we made the decision to move from my hometown, St. Louis, up here. My wife was ready to be back in Canada, closer to her family. And at the time, the decision was, do we stay in St. Louis and I make partner at the firm I was at, doing insurance defense litigation, or do we move to Canada and I have to figure out what I want to be when I grow up? We chose to do that. This was still not the plan. Tiffany, you and I have touched on this in previous conversations, but I, like just about every lawyer, ignored the LinkedIn platform more or less through 12 years of practice. And it was only after making the decision to leave the practice, a buddy and I hatched a plan for me to join his consulting company in a business development role. So when I left the practice, he said, you need to learn LinkedIn. And that's why I started paying attention. I basically took Justin Welsh's operating system course, which was huge back then. And it opened up the platform for me in a new way that kind of helped me gain traction. And then I noticed that a lot of lawyers were seeing what I was doing, even though I was no longer practicing, and I was just writing about creativity for the most part. People started asking if I could help them gain traction on LinkedIn. I saw that was pretty straightforward. Then I had a buddy named Evan Chasteen out of Alpharetta, Georgia, who ran a digital marketing agency. And in the summer of 22, he asked if I'd be interested in writing for a ghostwriting client that he had, a roofer. And I said, no, man, I'm 40 years old. I have a wife and 2 kids. I'm not going to write other people's social media posts. And then he told me how much that contract was for. And I said, okay, dude, yes, I'm 40 years old. I have a wife and 2 small children. I will try writing other people's LinkedIn posts. And it was a situation where that roofer had been posting basically every week for a year. And his best post had gone to about 1,800 impressions. And the first one I wrote for him broke 25,000. And so it was like, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, I did not expect that at all. And that was the point where I had one friend in particular been in my ear saying, you should think about doing this for lawyers. You should think about doing this for lawyers. And that was the point where I was like, okay, I'll try. So that was when I started sending messages to folks from my network. One trial lawyer out of St. Louis, who I'd known since high school, was the first person to say yes. I started working with him in October of 22. The rest is history, Tiffany. So that's the 5-minute version of the story.
And that's really cool. So I mean, I guess we started doing our own kind of small business thing at the same time, which is super neat. So I've been thinking a lot about this because, like, it's not too many people are talking about like just writing, what it's like to write and what it means to write something good, because ChatGPT and all that good stuff. Tell me a little bit about like kind of the early days. Like how long were you taking on each post? Was it something like you just, not to diminish it, but you just farted out and you just have that touch? Or do you like have to spend like time kind of crafting the message? Like, how do you get there?
I love that question. I would say that yes, most things I fart out. I think that's actually an accurate way to phrase it. I'll say that at this point we're working with we're writing for about 20 different leaders. We do rely on our GPTs, our robot friends, to do a lot of the initial drafting. That said, we still hold back a certain amount of work that we still do the old-fashioned way. And when it comes to my stuff, I still do it just about everything the old-fashioned way. Like I don't actually use GPT very much at all, probably to my detriment. I probably should be using it more for my own stuff. But so to answer your question, typically a post is going to take about a half hour that can range. But if it's the sort of post that's going to be between 200 and 400 words, it's going to take upwards of a half hour to like get it really dialed in. And we've never made a whole lot of progress in terms of how you make that faster. What we found is that with like the GPTs are getting pretty good, and we've got ours pretty well trained to be able to write in our style and in clients' voices, where on a good day, our human interaction with a given post is less than 15 minutes, but we're still spending a fair amount of time, whether it's changing the language or just rearranging things, or we spend a lot of time on hooks. And hooks I think, remain important when it comes to whether or not a LinkedIn post is going to move. So I would say there's a lot of upside to spending time with the hooks, even if we're using GPT for the drafting. Found that GPT is not awesome at writing LinkedIn hooks yet, or at least we still haven't totally cracked that code.
Well, and I have to agree, because I use ChatGPT a lot for my own stuff and then some other people's stuff. Like you, I have some like GPTs trained in clients' voices for a particular task. Like, that's usually good if you can like narrow it down to like this person's voice on this platform, like YouTube descriptions or something like that. Mm-hmm. But the time to writing is time consuming, even with ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT streamlines a little bit, but you're still, having to rewrite and craft that perfect hook. The other day, which I talk about it a lot, and I hope I don't start letting it leak into the podcast, but I've started my own Substack, and I started writing more long form articles there, just because I like, the long form pieces, and it's honestly kind of therapeutic for me. But, I'm usually writing that during my off time, like when I'm not, working for my company. I'm doing it like at nights or on the weekends, partially because I enjoy it. And sometimes it'll take me 2 hours to write, an article that's like 1,500, 200 words. And, that kind of time, that's the kind of time it takes to, and I hope my articles are good, but that's the time it takes to like write something that's good, that gets noticed. And I think like just generally people who don't write, or people who aren't familiar with the process, or maybe haven't had to do creative writing, kind of undervalue how much time it takes. And so you think LinkedIn posts, you should take, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And it's like, maybe, it depends on what you're trying to say. And if ChatGPT gets you close enough, and then, like you said, writing a good hook. I'm still trying to figure that out, if I'm being honest. Hooks are are difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's a tricky business. And I appreciate what you're saying. I've been thinking need to spend more time getting back into more long form writing. That it's I was thinking I have you seen the Trial Lawyers Journal? That it's like
let's just say no. Yeah.
yeah, I think the third edition is coming out soon, but it's like this, it's a nice like Chad Sands runs it. He's the CMO of a tech company, and they put out this. It's really lovely. Like they do it properly. Like it's well designed. It's beautifully bound. Um, and I wrote an article about the Mike Morse firm, and I think the title is something like the magic trick that is the Mike Morse law firm, and it was about 1,600 words, and it was like the most fun that I've had writing of anything I've written in the last 2 years. And I was struck by that. I didn't necessarily expect that to be the case, but as I was doing it, and once I was done, I was like really happy with the product. And also, one of the main takeaways for me was GPT couldn't have touched that. Like the thing that I produced there, uh, the way that our brains make connections and the way that our thinking through a subject, like in the level of detail we have to be able to write something like what you're describing, it's still different than what, if you can ask GPT to give you a 2,000 word piece and it will do it in 20 seconds, but it's it's not going to be able to make the connections that you can make or that I can make. And my theory I've been playing around with is that I think for where we're going, I think it's going to become a situation where really good human writing actually is more valuable than it's ever been. It's going to be that like short head, long tail sort of thing, I think, where it's like if you're really good, you will be able to make a very good living as a like good old fashioned writer. Um, uh, Also, what it could see, like, writing is almost becoming like performance art, where say like people show up and who knows, maybe this is like a 25 year in the future dystopian situation, but it's like people paying to go watch somebody write something beautiful in real time. I could see that being a thing, but I may be digressing.
No, I mean, these podcasts go where they go. And honestly, I'm just kind of happy when we're not talking about AI the whole time because I'm guilty of that. We kind of are, but really we're talking about writing and somebody way more famous and way more experienced than me. I don't know who said it, but somebody said writing is thinking. Yeah, at some point, maybe I'll have to Google that later and see who the original quote was. And in some of the more long form pieces I've created, because I'm writing about legal marketing, I'm writing about usually stuff that we're doing.
Mhm.
And it's funny how, like, you spend 2 hours, I spend 2 hours like writing an article about lead attribution. And as I'm writing some words, I make the connection. It's like, oh shit, that's the problem. And then I go into lead docket and figure something out. And it's like, oh, and discover something in the processes of what we're doing for our clients through the activity of writing and just getting my thoughts onto a page and kind of making those interesting connections.
Mhm.
And, that's, people have talked about like what we lose when writing becomes too easy. Because back in the day, like it was just impressive if you could write consistently. Like it was just impressive if you could write a newsletter once a month, once a week, post on LinkedIn once a month, once a week. You almost didn't have to be too special because it wasn't so easy to write basically. But
Yeah.
now like the bar has been raised. Everyone can write. And now like we're looking at what's good and what's bad. And so honestly, I think it's kind of enabled us to be a little bit more critical about the content we're consuming instead of just like, oh, this blog somebody wrote, they wrote it, so it must be authoritative or something like that. So it's interesting. And I do love writing. I do have some LinkedIn questions that I probably should get to before we get too far down this rabbit hole.
Sure.
Um, so, as far as hooks go, and you don't have to spill all your secrets here if you don't want to, obviously, but like, what are, like, give me some guidance. Like, give me some guidance on how to make a good hook. Cause I feel like I get too in my own head about it. And for me, like, sometimes my best hooks are like, that was an accident. I didn't think that would work as well as it did. So I don't know if you can offer any help or suggestions.
Yeah, so well, I'll lead this off with a humbling story, which is a friend of mine, some I've helped out a little bit. His name's Derek Whitty. He's been a fractional GC in tech out of Arizona. And Derek sent me a post. He was like, "What do you think about this one?" And I took a look at it, took a pass at it, changed some things, changed his hook. I think his hook was something to the effect of, "I got splashed with a big like dose of Haterade the other day." Like something like a Haterade was in there. Like, that's stupid. So I like basically just axed that hook. And then I sent it to him. He's like, "Oh, I just posted it 8 minutes ago. Should I take it back?" I was like, I looked at it and like already this post had like 11 reactions in 8 minutes or something. I was like, no, you should see what happens. And sure enough, it's his best post ever. It went super viral. Which is to say, I don't know that it does if he had used the hook that I, in all my wisdom, recommended. So like we're all just experimenting. We're all just learning. Here are a few things that I have learned about hooks. One thing I'll give y'all is what I call the hook trick. The hook trick is one where I think maybe speaks to your point about getting in your head, Tiffany, is I think when we start, we have a tendency to want to sort of like summarize what the post is about in some way. And the hook trick is and I do this on just about every post that I will write, is try popping off the hook. Like try just pulling off the first two sentences and seeing what you've got there. And in a lot of situations, what's left when you pop that off is a better hook than what you had as the hook. Because typically it means that you're getting into, it's like we try to like summarize and like set up what we're about to get into. And like, ain't nobody got time for that. I was going to say, as the kids say, kids don't say that. Old people like me say that. So it's like getting right into the story, getting right into the meat of what you're talking about tends to be a better hook. And what in those situations where that is true, you can a lot of times take those first two lines, drop them down to the bottom, and they serve as actually a pretty nice summary of the post in a way that what you had as the hook actually serves better as more of what I would call your dismount, the end. So there's one simple tip. I think of what we want to do with hooks is the goal with your hook is to get somebody to press see more, right? It's that largely LinkedIn spreads posts based on like dwell time, on the amount of time that somebody spends on it, right? So getting folks to at least click that means that you're at least going to get another couple seconds where it's interesting enough that they're going to press that button and join you farther down the post. And so I think about wanting hooks to be two things. Number one, specific, and number two, evocative. So by evocative, I mean that you are building up some kind of a suspense, or you're inspiring some feeling that, whether that's curiosity or maybe you're poking some in a way that irritates them a little bit. There's like you're evoking a feeling that makes somebody want to go, or that most things of the easiest example of like building suspense is like, well, I was going to use one example, but I'll use a different one. That's maybe not quite as suspenseful, but that one of the general hooks that works is like, here are this 8 things I've learned from when I was living in, Antarctica as a polar bear herder, like that sort of thing. So it's like, ooh, so we've got some specific detail there. And that's like 8 lessons. What are those lessons? So they'll click see more, because we are human beings and we are prone to really like lists. So just like that suspense of like, how do I get it to the point where at the end of those first 2 lines that make up the hook, you've left somebody hanging in a way that the only way they can close that loop is to click see more and keep going. What I mean by specific is including details. And we found that like numbers work really well. Proper nouns work well. Just the more specific you can be, to start painting a picture of what we're talking about, the better off you're going to be. And I think it speaks to a larger challenge that we have. And this is one that why I'm not closing up shop, thinking AI is putting me out of business yet. ChatGPT still kind of sucks at this. It's something that particularly with my coaching clients that we talk about a lot, is they'll give me a draft and I need a shorthand for this. Maybe we could workshop the shorthand, but it's if I can copy, paste, and post what you just gave me, and people would not be able to tell that it was yours, not mine, you have a serious problem. Your post sucks. Like basically, a post that does not have enough detail, that it is specific to you and your experience, it's not going to work. Right? And I think that what you talked about, Tiffany, about like where writing is suddenly easy, we're now, to your point, like when I started doing this, I think when you were like, I think you've been writing stuff on LinkedIn from 2022 or before, right? Like you've been doing it for a minute too. Back then, writing the post was the hard part. And so somebody who wrote a lot of posts, there was a correlation between quantity and quality. That correlation no longer exists. Quantity is no longer an indicator of quality. And actually, it seems like it may be an inverse relationship, that more quantity doesn't indicate that you have gained enough expertise that you can talk about this stuff all day long. It probably just means that you're having robots write a bunch of shit, right? It's not good. So in that environment, and this is why I encourage more and more people to actually post less. And I thought we both know Tim Semmelroth. He's been able to support in a coaching capacity for a number of months, and he's been doing a great job of like posting Monday through Friday for the better part of 18 months. And I talked him into about 2 months now ago, say like, what if you tried posting twice a week? And you're pulling out the sort of stuff like he would post a joke on Fridays, like that sort of thing, like set pieces. Nothing wrong with those. Put those on the firm page. Don't put those on your personal page. Like that stuff, keep that stuff on firm pages. But the things that Tim, I was saying, keep on your personal page are your stories. He's a great lawyer. He's a great guy. He has so much to offer in terms of his understanding of how to practice law, how to lead people, how to be a decent person. Like lead with that and see what happens. And it's been good to see that his like 2 best posts ever have now, when I gave him that advice, there was like a month there where I was like, I wonder if that was good advice. But like he's now in the last 2 weeks, he's basically had like his biggest post ever. And I think it was as a product of, again, that quality over quantity, that it's like getting specific and like knowing who you're talking to. I went down a rabbit hole about posting in general. You got me on a soapbox when we were talking about how to write good hooks. So I just answered hopefully like 2 or 3 other questions in that ramble, Tiffany.
Oh no, and it wasn't a ramble. I loved it. And me personally, like, I do post every day, sometimes twice a day, because what I do is I schedule out posts in advance. Like I try to sit down, block off some time and get like 15 done in one sitting. And, I record a lot of content. I make a lot of content about marketing. It's getting easier to pick out like specific things to talk about on LinkedIn. But, I do notice that like, okay, most of my posts get a few likes, but like one or two do really well. And that's what mattered more than all the little ones that just got a few likes one day,
Yeah.
And so I honestly been thinking about that for my own stuff. It's just, can I cut back LinkedIn?
So it's a hard question. And actually for somebody in your position, or really in my position, I'm not sure that I give the same advice, because actually I'm at a place where I'm ramping up. Like next week is going to be the first time where I have my team supporting me on how we're producing more stuff, where we are going to start going to twice a day for me. And the way I think about it is like, so on LinkedIn, if you want stuff to spread, like post for like to really move, and this is one of the things I helped Tim with and I've helped a bunch of other people with, it's understanding that your best bet is to put yourself in a position where you're not talking to somebody or talking at them, you're talking with them. So it's more like if you're talking shop, whatever it is that turns you on, right? If you're a trial lawyer, most of the people I work with are attorneys on the plaintiff side who like trying cases. These nerds will talk about trial practice all day long, right? And I have a blast like listening to it. I have a blast putting it down on the page. And when they put it out there, the stuff that they're putting out there, they're not aiming it at people who necessarily need to hire a personal injury lawyer. They're mainly aiming it at other personal injury lawyers. So instead, and these are all people who rely on referrals heavily, which I know you work with firms that referral marketing is a huge part of what they do, right? So instead of just saying, hey, send me your referrals in a direct, which is like the way we might traditionally think about how to leverage LinkedIn, it's saying like, let me tell you a story, right? A story about this time that a case went sideways, or like how this trial went, something interesting that came up in this last trial I was in, something that's like showing what you're doing, what you're learning, what you're struggling with in real time, in a way that pulls them into the conversation. And so in those posts that get more reach are when somebody, and it doesn't have to be like the best lawyer in the world or the person who's gotten the biggest verdicts for 40 years. Like you can be a relatively new lawyer and have a lot of success by doing what I'm describing, where you're just talking shop with other lawyers. You got law students in the mix, and you just have people who are interested in practicing better. That's why career stuff tends to go really well. It's why for people like us, where we're seen as sellers. So like your stuff, I like how your stuff is like it's aimed at the people you're trying to talk. You're trying to talk to law firm owners who could be looking for help with their marketing. Your stuff is never going to spread very far when that's the case, because you're talking to somebody rather than like with people who are kind of on the same side of the conversation. But it doesn't matter. Like that's what you're here to do. You're here to get clients. So you don't need 10,000 impressions on a post. 500 impressions on a post can do well. All you need to do is you're trying to get on people's radars, where it's like, okay, it's in a way that you can stick. So like that's one piece where the higher volume for you helps, gives you more shots to just get in front of somebody. And then the bigger thing for me is that you're creating the body of work that somebody, when they see it and they click on your profile, they can go there, and then that's where they can engage with it. So it's stuff like it could be months later, right? In a way that does, in terms of the metric, and those people are never going to engage with anything, right? So like they're ghosts as far as we're concerned, but it gives them an easy way. It is your place to basically sell people on whether you know what you're talking about. So the more stuff you have, the more quality posts you have there, the more you're able to show that person, enough that they're basically sold on that story. Like, okay, I know this person knows what they're talking about. And then that's when they reach out to you. So there you go. You sent me on another rabbit hole, but
No,
that's,
and I
I hope that like speaks to at least, like, I think what your strategy makes a lot of sense for what that's worth.
I mean, it definitely speaks to me. And no, this is super great. I'm sure like you probably deal with this same problem, but times 10, which is the issue with like kind of getting those like unique responses from attorneys. Because like when I ask my attorneys like, hey, let's think about like what we're going to post about on LinkedIn, let's talk about some stories we can tell, some things we can talk about. Like I've had the issue where my clients will like send me your list of questions, and I do, and they send me back a ChatGPT response. And so like trying to get like that unique kind of thought leadership or those unique stories out of the attorneys, that's the key to like making all of this content super good. And I'm trying to coach my clients on, and well, depending on the client, try to coach them or coach their marketing teams on just making more content. Just recording the podcast, and even if it gets like 15 views or something like that, just having it, because if you have that content, it exists. What's the rule? 7, 11, 4. Somebody needs to see 7 hours of your content 11
Right.
times on
Across
4
four
platforms.
different channels. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I always have to like think about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so it just kind of adds to that body of content that when people do go to seek more information about you, they see podcasts, they see blogs. Like if you're doing a personal blog, not too many people are, but I think they should. They see your LinkedIn, they see your Facebook, they see your Instagram. And if you're continually making new content, you're just going to be way more visible than the business or the law firm that's not making anything new. That's just, putting money into paid ads and trying to get an ROI and just trying to make it happen. And I just, that's so important, I think, for our listeners, is just getting in the habit of making content, making your marketing more than just about lead generation, making it about creating something new that gets you to stand out. And I know that's hard for a lot of law firms, but it's super important.
Yeah. All right. Amen. And that's that distinction between lead gen and demand gen, right? And one thing I say on discovery calls is I don't do lead gen. I don't know how to do lead gen. I don't care to do lead gen. Uh, what I do is help people become the person to, like, if you have a specific problem and you want to solve that problem, I'm the person you call, right? Like like being that clear on who you help and the problem you solve for people, that when the situation arises, like they don't need to go shopping. They don't need to think about it. And content, to your point, is it the best way to do that? I think it is. I mean, and again, to your point, like doing it in different forms, doing it on different channels. Like I say there's no downside. And in part, there's like the ROI discussion where we're talking dark social, how hard it is to connect the dots between where did a specific case come from? Was it Google? Was it Facebook? Yada, yada, yada. It's really hard. I mean, people say, how do I show ROIs? I don't worry about it. Like my churn on these 3 years is almost zero. That's how I measure whether I'm being effective. This is why I talk about being magnetic, like developing a magnetic online presence. When I started doing this was not at all intuitive to me, but what I have learned is that the benefits of learning how to show up online are myriad. There are just a bunch of different good things that can happen and ways to create opportunities. Or it's like, as you said earlier in this conversation, like writing is how you think, right? It's like we improve our thinking through our writing. We improve our writing through our writing. We attract talent through our writing. We can attract cases. We can attract referrals. We can build relationships that lead to opportunities like speaking at conferences. Um, uh, like there are just so many different things that can come through. Obviously, I'm biased toward LinkedIn, but developing a presence on a platform like LinkedIn, that it's hard to pin it down in monetary terms, but I think of it as something where your benefits compound. That as you get better at it, you become more magnetic and you attract more opportunities and bigger opportunities, whether that's talent or cases or what have you. So that's a soapbox answer that is getting us toward I think the end of the conversation.
So we're coming up at the end of it because we're 2:45. We're almost at the end. So I guess well, I don't have too much to add about it, although I feel like we could have kept talking for another hour or so. But so I guess just to close up, is there something you want to leave people with, or do you just want people to go and seek you out on LinkedIn? How do you want to do that?
LinkedIn is still the best place to find me. I also have a podcast called In the Digital Arena, but you can find that through my LinkedIn profile.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and being a guest today. Really appreciate the conversation. I got a lot out of it. I hope our listeners did. So thanks for the free advice. Yeah, I highly recommend Tony. He does so great on LinkedIn and is just able to help all these attorneys build their profiles. All of the content looks really good and just honestly kind of miles ahead of the stuff that I can do right now at my capacity. And definitely got the secret sauce, which I'm kind of jealous of, if I'm being honest. But thank you so much, Tony, for being a guest. And I guess we'll see you next time.